to keep records of their activities to enable public access to encourage transparency.
And in the course of this program, we would like to find out what those excluded are meant. Are they classified documents? That's what part of the thing we'll be looking at, when the program gets on.
Sure.
Now, it's also true that the Act does not apply to state-owned public institutions due to the principles of federalism.
Killian, that means that the FOI has to be adopted by each state legislature, for it is to apply at the state level too. As it stands today, only Ekiti and Lagos State have adopted the Freedom of Information Act.
And 4 years after the Freedom of Information Act, it is said to be grossly underutilized, apart from the fact that many Nigerians are not aware that the Act exists and their rights and responsibilities. Most Nigerian journalists and civil society organizations have not embraced the Act that should be a veritable tool for investigative journalism, a struggle that took the Nigerian people over 10 years with the National Assembly to achieve.
So what are the rights and responsibilities of the Nigerian people, the government, and institutions as it pertains to the Freedom of Information Act? How far and so far?
And what should Nigerians do to tap the benefits of the Freedom of Information Act? This is Good Morning Nigeria, Friday's edition, and in fact the last edition for the week. And my name is Kirian Umayo. Welcome to the program. And we are broadcasting live on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority at the nation's Federal Capital Territory.
And I am Femi Okeowo, welcoming you along with Kirian to this edition of Good Morning Nigeria. You should also expect our companion segments, which are the newspaper review, business, sports, foreign, and entertainment news. But first, let's take highlights of the day's news from Stella Namiti.
Hello, good morning, and thanks for joining us on the news segment. The Independent National Electric Commission has declared Adegboyega Isiaka Oyetola of All Progressives Congress winner of the Osun State governorship election. He polled 255,505 votes to beat his closest opponent, Ademola Adeleke of the People's Democratic Party, who scored 255,025 votes.
Joseph Adeola Fuakwe hereby certify that I am the returning officer for the Osun State governorship election held on the 22nd and 27th of September 2018, that Adegboyega Isiaka Oyetola of APC, having satisfied the requirements of the law and scored the highest number of votes, is hereby declared the winner and is returned elected.
Chief of Staff to the President, Abba Kyari, yesterday met with the leaders of the organized labor to iron out ways of ending the ongoing strike embarked upon by workers of the country. Both parties described the meeting as fruitful, which indicates that the warning strike may be put to rest in a matter of hours. President of the Nigeria Labour Congress, Comrade Ayuba Waba, told State House correspondent Jide Onifade that the details of the meeting would be communicated to the Nigerian workers before taking further action.
The purpose of this meeting is to understand what led to this strike, okay, and they told me what it is. That's what. There's no position of government. All what they want to understand it. Why did we have to go to this stage? And they told me what led to this. And what led to this is not about the figure, it's just the process.
Try to share all the details of the information that pertain to the issue of the national minimum wage and how the ongoing negotiation was stalled, and also the best way to get out of it. And government have then given us the award, which will also go and communicate to our members and revert back to government.
Meanwhile, union leaders have urged the federal government to dialogue with labor so as not to prolong the nationwide warning strike. The Non-Academic Staff Union of Educational and Association Institutions, NASU, at its national executive meeting held in Abuja, commended government for the approval of 8 billion naira for the payment of earned allowances of non-teaching staff of universities. They urged the Federal Ministry of Education to facilitate the process of the disbursement of the funds.
Commend the federal government for the inauguration of the renegotiation committee for the polytechnics and colleges of education. We are, however, dissatisfied with these two committees have refused to work, thereby creating the impression that government is insincere with the process of the renegotiation of the agreement.
Minimum wage, NASU and Medical and Health Workers Union say they are saddened that the work of the tripartite committee is being hampered by the lack of statistics.
Minimum wage is just about $30-something. That is a far cry from what it was in 2011. When we negotiated the existing one.
It is important to note that by the National Minimum Wage Act of 2004, the national minimum wage is supposed to be reviewed after every 5 years.
Both unions want industrial harmony to prevail in the land for higher productivity and growth. Nigeria has expressed concern over the slow pace of progress in accomplishing total elimination of nuclear arsenals by harboring nation states. President Buhari stated this in New York and reminded the world of its shared responsibility in the pursuit of peace, justice, and prosperity for all humanity. This was at an event commemorating the International Day for the Total Elimination of Nuclear Weapons held on the sidelines of the United Nations General Assembly. Following the adoption of political declaration towards ending tuberculosis at the 23rd session of the United Nations General Assembly in New York, Nigeria's President of Nigeria's wife, Aisha Buhari, has been appointed as the UN Special Ambassador to end tuberculosis. This is in recognition of her selfless services in health advocacy. State House correspondent Aliu Kabir reports that while addressing TB Committee and other world leaders at the session, Mrs. Buhari made a commitment not to relent in her advocacy until the epidemic of tuberculosis in the world is eliminated. The United States Population Fund, UNFPA, has donated relief materials to flood-affected states in the country. Presenting the relief materials to the Minister of State for Health, Dr. Sagi Ehanire, the acting UNFPA country representative, Dr. Eugene Konguye, explains that the items are mainly for women and girls, especially pregnant women and lactating mothers. The gesture, she says, is in tune with the agency's role of providing life-saving reproductive health care to women in crisis-affected countries. Rabi Abdallah reports that the Minister of State for Health, Dr. Osagi Hanire, assured the team of prompt dispatch of the relief materials, which include dignity kits for pregnant women and sleeping mats in temporary locations to the affected areas. A working group which will monitor the condition of various detention centers across the country to make sure that they conform with the rule of law and human rights conditions has been inaugurated. Chairman of the Administration of Criminal Justice Monitoring Committee and Chief Justice of the FCT High Court, Justice Ishak Bello, inaugurated the committee.
We are concerned about public complaints, about ill treatment, unfair handling, unclean environment, and so many lapses. This committee will be the one to be monitoring around, going into the police cell, looking at the police cells, any detention centers, to make sure that there is proper treatment and humane environment on people behind bars.
And that's the news highlights for now. Good Morning Nigeria continues with Kirian and Femi after this break.
Unemployment, notably youth unemployment, features strongly in our party's manifesto. We intend to attack the problem frontally through revival of agriculture.
The 30K is going a long way. Actually, I bought an acre of land for 60K like 2012, and presently I have a cassava farm and a yam farm.
Reorganized, trained, and fully equipped, we are the new improved Nigeria Police Force. We fight crime. We bust syndicates. Whatever the crime, wherever the hideout, the Nigeria Police Force will get you busted. Stop kidnapping, armed robbery, murder, pipeline vandalism, and other criminal activities. Be productive. Be security conscious. Join the police force to secure your life and property. This message is from the Nigeria Police Force Public Relations Department.
The Aerial Assurance Challenge.
Oh, thank you. But what assurance can you give our daughter?
Everything. With the new look Aerial, I can even do the laundry.
Prove it then.
Okay. Let's make this stain even tougher. Now, let's wash the cloth with your detergent and with new look Aerial. Do you believe me now?
Aerial, now in a new look pack.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the daring and invincible Louis the Mosquito. Responsible for 200 malaria cases all on its own. Is there anything that can kill Louis? Morphine! Presenting Mortine's Power Guard. Its powerful formula kills malaria mosquitoes fast. So, get Mortine's Power Guard.
To the outer framers, the hat tippers, the fringe goers, you don't need to hide anymore. Try Dettol Even Tone. It cleans and helps to reduce the appearance of blemishes caused by oil, dirt and germs, giving your skin a healthy feel for an even better you. Dettol, be 100% sure.
Dettol soap is now also available for 100 Naira only.
These days, people get their news and information from more media sources than ever before. Some of the news and information given are fake, unverified, doctored, and manufactured to create confusion, stir disaffection, and cause disunity. Before you believe or share any news, ask yourself, is this real? Is it from a credible source? Is it verified or verifiable? Fake news is dangerous. Whether you do it for fun or for political gains, real people can get hurt. Fake news, don't create it, don't spread it.
This is a public service announcement from NTA.
Kehinde suffers from indigestion. His twin Taiyi suffers from heartburn. Sometimes it's the other way around, or both. That's why they use Gaviscon Double Action. It soothes within 3 minutes and lasts for up to 4 hours. For double relief from heartburn and indigestion, Gaviscon Double Action.
The Nigerian Television Authority News 24 channel, your dependable all-round news station offering you world-class news programs, documentaries, spotlights, promos and information highlights. Take advantage of our network reach and advertise your interest, goods and services with us. NTA News 24, first among equals with digital broadcasting. You can reach us on Channel 21 Terrestrial TV and Channel 101 on the StarTimes platform. For more inquiries, please call Coretta 0803 618 9986 or Henry on 0803 379 0884. Join us today.
You are watching NTA, Nigerian Television Authority. For more information and news updates, visit our website at www.nta.ng, or you can follow us on Twitter at NTA News Now, or you can like us on Facebook at NTA Network News. Stay connected on our YouTube channel at www.youtube.com/NTA News Online. Watch our live stream at www.nta.ng/live. NTA, you can't beat the rich.
All right, you are watching Good Morning Nigeria, where we dissect burning national issues. And for us this morning, the next is a newspaper review. Stay with us.
And here with us, as expected, as we're accustomed to, is our newspaper reviewer, Bayo Atoyebi. Welcome to Good Morning Nigeria.
Thank you, Femi. Good morning. Good morning, Kirian. And
Good morning, Bayo. You're welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah, we have a couple of newspapers here. And here I have Daily Trust. Daily Trust. Just below the nameplate of Daily Trust, let's begin with that. APC's Oyetola wins in Osho as Adeleke cries foul. It's on page 5. And beside that, we have telecoms industry loses $3 billion revenue to SIM box fraud. And the major headline this morning on the Daily Trust is APC disqualifies Mama Taraba, Shitu, others from Guba race as presidential primary holds today across the states. Kaduna Yobe shun labor strike as Lagos others comply. And now below the photograph, where you have some of the labor leaders standing, perhaps at the gate of the Federal Secretariat. That should be yesterday. Now we have earthquake likely in Abuja, Kaduna, Ogun, Oyo, Bayelsa. Find out who said that. It's on page 3 of Daily Trust. And now troops repel Boko Haram attacks in Borno on page 6. No agenda to end Nigeria's to send Nigerians away. That's a Ghanaian president, as on page 5.
Yes, we're still with Labour, and New Telegraph focuses on the effect of the strike. Banks, schools, government offices, courts, National Assembly shut, and with rider, judges locked out of court, containers trapped at ports, Labour grounds economic activities, chase away workers, and then health workers join strike, presidency, Labour meet. And then immediately below this headline are pictures of the strike in various states. And then below that is the story of the Osun rerun poll. And it says, vote buying, violence, Ma Osun rerun poll. PDP Adeleke reject result. Osun voters have spoken. APC saying that. Those are some of the things we have on the front page of New Telegraph.
You will have to bring in by here now.
Yeah. Yes, Osun State has a governor-elect in the person of Isiaka Boyega Oyetola. The returning officer for the election, Professor Joseph Wagbe, announced 255,505 votes for the APC candidate, while Ademola Nuruddin Adeleke scored 255. Last week, the PDP had led with 353 votes, but with the supplementary election in the 7 polling units, APC scored 1,160 votes to the PDP's 325. The election was quite close. The margin of win was just 232 votes. The INEC's management of the election was praised. However, observers observed the intrusion of thugs despite the preponderance of presence of security. In fact, various newspapers have various different headlines describing the elections. One says, New Telegraph, violence, mass, Osun rerun election. Leadership say Osun rerun election. Observers grant says they were obstructed from moving around. The Tribune says Osun rerun will reject the elections, so says the People's Democratic Party. This day reports that CUPP, which is the coalition of united political parties, says that they call for the cancellation of the Osun elections. INEC, independent, says Osun election, the Osun people have spoken, and the APC, the PDP should accept the result. Already, the People's Democratic Party has denounced, proclaimed that it is better, it has rejected the results. It says that the national chairman, Uche Sekondo, spoke at an emergency meeting of the National Working Committee at Abuja, and he said, Osun is under siege. We are sad, and if this is what the 2019 profile for the nation, then the nation is doomed. Candidate Ademola Adeleke has already indicated that he's heading for the tribunal. His brother, Dele Adeleke, says he will meet the party in the tribunal. The spokesman for the APC in Osun, also Kunle Oyatomi, says Osun people have spoken. The PDP should accept the verdict of it. But one interesting thing about elections in this country is that the losers never accept elections. I can cite 2 examples. For instance, when Adams Oshiomhole was governor of Edo State, he raised alarm when there was, for his second term, preponderance of police and security. At the end of the day, he came to congratulate President Goodluck Jonathan for election because he won. If you go to Abuja in Anambra, Obiano raised alarm about attempts to rig election. When eventually he won, he came to congratulate President Muhammad Buhari about a well-conducted election.
So it's winning that determines.
Yes.
We hear that too in court.
Yes.
The judiciary is the hope of the common man when we win.
Yes.
But when they lose, it's been compromised.
Usually when you go to court, the court in most instances, except very few, always upholds the verdict at the polls. So we must begin to learn to accept when we are defeated. It's only once that I think the governor in Southwest accepted and congratulated his opponent. Yeah. His party immediately rebuffed and said, no, we are going to court.
Yes.
Now, let's please still speak to the circumstance that brought about the rerun in Osun.
Yes.
It would seem as if the violence that brought about the rerun in the first instance persisted during this rerun election from the headlines and various which you have referred to. Just 7 units. And we see all sorts of allegations, which we did not hear of. We monitored the first election,
yes,
and we saw how everybody praised Osun people. Only for us to go for a run in just 7 units, and we are hearing violence, we are hearing vote buying and all that. It would seem it persisted in these small areas.
For those, the polling units where rerun was ordered, what were the causes?
Yeah.
1, it was overvoting.
Yeah.
And for the 6 others,
and,
it was ballot snatching,
yeah, exactly,
and card reader snatching,
yeah,
and to the extent that in 1, the returning officer had to run for safety of his life. And if you follow through from all the allegations, it means that the violence which led to the rerun still persisted in those areas.
It means that those areas have been mapped out as flashpoints, because if they had a crisis there during the main election, of course it has to replicate again this time around. Okay, now we have a Nigerian pilot here. The stories below the nameplate. EFCC asked to probe GE over $20 billion per investment saga. That's on page 9. Buhari tasks diaspora Africans on anti-corruption measures. The story is on page 13. Now, the Nigerian pilot also captured the rerun election in Osun State. It said Osun rerun, that's with 4 kickers. PDP kicks as APC cruises to victory. It's a coup. Adeleke exposed APC rigging template. That says secondaries. Rerun, not free, fair, or credible, CDD. The journalists, observers barred from polling units. And now let's go below the photograph in the Nigerian pilot. In Kaduna, 16 kidnapped in Benungwari. It's on page 13. 2 die in Anambra as flood cases worsen. Federal government disburses 1.2 billion naira to women less privileged in Katsina. Abuja International Trade Fair kicks off in grand style. Plus, Nasarawa Deputy Governor distanced self from 18 billion naira allegations against Al Makora. That's on page 11.
Now, with the Punch, we'll just go straight to the below the page, the front page of the Punch, and we will see some interesting stories, part of which Kirian has highlighted. Flood kills 199, displaces 176,000. That is NEMA. I think it's a cumulative, that's the total. And then hoodlums. That story on flood is found in page 12. And then hoodlums attack party secretariat, shot policemen in Bayelsa. That story will be found in pages 4 and 5. And then the one, another political story, very catchy one. APC National Working Committee disqualifies Shitu over NYSC scandal, postpones primaries. Those are the main areas we have not looked to, but this time in Punch. Bio.
Okay, let's go back to the main story of the day, which is the strike. The Chief of Staff to the President held a meeting with organized labor yesterday. Abba Kyari said the meeting was called for to know what actually led to the strike. And he said that from all indications, labor, it indicated that labor and those who were negotiating got stuck somehow. And he's making initiative to ensure that the process goes on. Ayuba Waba indicated that the discussion was quite fruitful, and the Chief of Staff has made some commitments, and then they will also take what he has said to their members because they represent the larger organ. The meeting, he said, the information from the national minimum wage will be taken on, a new negotiation, how negotiation was stalled, and the best way to get out of it. He said government has given this word, and they will take their words back to the members and revert back to government. But the worrying development was that there are indications that somewhere in Lagos and Abuja, some union members were adamant and forced others who were willing to work to stop work. Now, there is a freedom for you to withdraw your services if you belong to a member of the union. And the practice in the public service is that some category of senior officers do not belong to the unions, and therefore, when there is strike like this, they are required to come around to provide skeletal services. And when the union members put padlock and key and stop them from going to the offices, it becomes an occasion for crisis. And that's happened in the office of the Accountant General of the Federation. He had gone to the office assuring that in spite of the strike, federal workers will pay their salaries. But he said the staff of the management office need to get to the office to prepare the process for the salaries. And they had locked up the offices. So it took a lot of persuasion before they opened up the offices.
At the end of the day, it is the workers that will still suffer. They don't get their salaries. Well, I think with the involvement of the Chief of Staff and other stakeholders concerned, maybe within today we'll be able to know what the result of that meeting would be with respect to perhaps calling off the strike and for them to go back to the negotiating table.
As for the issue Bayo is raising, I think it's an issue that needs to be ironed out and streamlined in our labor relations.
Yes.
Picketing is a legitimate part of strikes. But, like you said, it's also the right of a worker I'm not even talking about management now. It's also the right of a worker to choose whether to work or not to work. So while the labor unions are exercising that arm of picketing right, the one for the worker too who can choose whether to work or not to work is the one that gets affected in the process of picketing.
So one right should not affect the other.
Override the other.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And you know, where one right stops, another right begins.
Yes.
Okay. Now let's go to the editorial for this morning. The editorial is taken from the New Telegraph and is on cultism. It said, cultism must end with Ekpoma killing. Now, let's read some portions of it. Now, the recent killing of 10 people, among them a female member of the National Youth Service Corps at a convocation party in Ekpoma, the community hosting the Edo State Ambrose Saleh University, has been linked to cultism. The night party was reportedly organized by a student of the university based in Ekpoma, the headquarters of Esan West local government area of Edo State. Apart from the youth corps member, 3 of the victims were former students of the university, while others were students of the institution who had just concluded their final examinations. Several others were also critically injured. And let's take this one before Bayo steps in. The police must also fish out not only the perpetrators, but their sponsors. No stone must be left unturned in unraveling those behind the mauling down of the 10 budding youths.
Before Bayo comes in, don't you find it interesting that this week on Good Morning Nigeria, we discussed this topic, and it could be a bad coincidence that while Good Morning Nigeria, NTA was focusing on trying to stop this ugly trend, it was happening again in Ekpoma.
It's a sad development, and if you watch it, it grew from the changing of nuns to nuns, where you now have student union government. You have situations whereby students spend 8 years in the university. They will not graduate. They will become politicians in campuses. And to ensure that they maintain their sovereignty over the union, they indulge in all these activities of cultism. In the older days, what you have used to be what they call the secret group. But they didn't indulge in killing. Everybody as a student was afraid of them. You let them to go on their own. But these days, cultism has grown to the extent that it is already permeated into secondary schools. In Kwara State, not too long ago, cultism was a big challenge in the state capital, Ilorin. And you found dead bodies around
among the secondary school students.
Secondary school students. And the danger here now is that you have cult confraternities. They call themselves air confraternity and the Black Axe. And the tendency is that they have branches in various universities, and they have confraternity meetings at night, and they arm themselves with arms, with drugs, with all sorts of things.
Yeah,
the peak now is the killing that must be stemmed.
All right, and as we discussed in this program the same week, as Femi mentioned, we talked about that the fact that the cultism has also left the university and, of course, entered the streets of Nigeria.
Yes.
All right, and this is where we conclude this segment of newspaper review for today. We'd like to appreciate Bayo Atoebi, who is a regular here with us, for his analysis. Bayo, thank you indeed.
Thank you.
I will see you again tomorrow. All right.
The Freedom of Information Act is our focus next on Good Morning Nigeria. Stay with us.
News which is shared for malicious purposes is a danger to our peace and security in Nigeria. Misinformation as fake news is a serious threat to our hard-earned democracy and promotes hatred and misunderstanding between our communities. We are all responsible for stopping the spread of fake news in its tracks. So, always check the source and credibility of any news item. Say no to fake news. This message is brought to you by the Federal Ministry of Information.
Winning in hot and dry conditions is hard. Causes the body to sweat, which attracts germs that are easily passed from one person to another. What keeps you so cool, man? Dettol Cool combines Dettol's protection and an invincible icy feel. For super cool confidence, use Dettol Cool.
Dettol soap is now also available for 100 naira only.
For years, the NTA has been promoting science, technology, arts and crafts under the tagged name National Children's Expo. We are set with another edition as we gather children around Nigeria, junior category ages 6 to 12 and senior category ages 13 to 18. The theme for Expo 2018, achieving self-sufficiency in agriculture, meeting the challenges of security and exposition of alternative energy as pathways to national development. Date, October 21st to 25th, 2018. Venue, NTA Headquarters Arena, Area 11, Garki, Abuja. We are set to celebrate the best of innovation across the country. For more information, please call the following numbers. NTA ETV, promoting learning.
Hate speech is not a joke. It incites genocide and crimes against humanity. Most of Africa's civil wars are caused by hate speech from one tribe against another. We don't want it here. The Nigerian government stands firm against hate speech.
Under no conditions whatsoever should we tolerate or excuse or justify hate speech or hateful conduct of any kind, especially where such is illegal.
There's no doubt that the resurgent push for separatism, as well as the rising cases of ethnic and religious disharmony, are all traceable to the growing phenomenon of hate speech.
One nation bound in freedom, peace and unity.
Nigeria, one nation, one people.
This is a public service announcement brought to you by NTA.
Brought us as usual.
As usual.
You have no
for the three you are welcome, sir.
As usual, yeah?
Welcome. You take that one. You take that one. You don't understand? We want Nigerian homegrown rice. Finish. You don't have? You don't have?
Join the rice revolution today.
No other rice that tastes like Nigerian rice. Are you sorry? That's the Nigerian rice we are talking about. Chocolate made in Nigerian rice. Healthy food. I'm going to bring Mrs. Mom to come to chocolate rice of made in Nigeria here. And see how it are made.
Correct.
And how they are cooked.
Correct.
Homegrown rice are good for your health. It boosts our economy and give employment to our people.
This message is brought to you by the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
You are watching NTA, Nigerian Television Authority. For more information and news updates, visit our website at www.nta.ng, or you can follow us on Twitter at NTA News Now, or you can like us on Facebook at NTA Network News. Stay connected on our YouTube channel at www.youtube.com/NTA News Online. Watch our live stream at www.nta.ng/live. NTA, you can't beat the rich.
The Nigerian Television Authority News 24 channel, your dependable all-round news station offering you world-class news programs, documentaries, spotlights, promos, and information highlights. Take advantage of our network reach and advertise your interest, goods and services with us. NTA News 24, first among equals with digital broadcasting. You can reach us on Channel 21 Terrestrial TV and Channel 101 on the StarTimes platform. For more inquiries, please call Coretta 0803 618 9986 or Henry on 0803 379 0884. Join us today.
Information, they say, is life. A lot of decisions you make are based on the information available to you. And it's possibly as a result of that, so much went into securing the Freedom of Information Act. It also helps transparency. So on Good Morning Nigeria today, we're going to look at how far Nigeria has been able to utilize this opportunity to expand the scope of governance.
All right, now in the studio to do justice to this topic, we have Professor Omar Pate, Dean, Faculty of Communications, Bayero University, Kano. Professor Omar, you're welcome to Good Morning Nigeria.
Just a correction. I'm no longer the dean. My term has expired.
All
so
right.
somebody has taken over.
Taking over.
Thank
Okay,
you, yes.
former Dean, Faculty of Communications, Bayero University, Kano. Also with us this morning is Sonny Daniel. He is the Northern Region Editor of the Vanguard newspapers. Sonny, it's a pleasure to have you this morning on this program.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thanks a lot.
We also have with us someone who has just completed a small tenure of, which is a regular on NTA. But then he goes beyond just newspaper. In fact, that is the platform on which he can always do an authoritative review of newspaper. He's been in this field for years, and indeed, he was the former executive secretary of the Nigerian Press Council. And so we bring Bayo Atoyebi to you as a guest on Good Morning Nigeria to help us look at the Freedom of Information Act. You are welcome, Bayo.
Thank you.
So Bayo Atoyebi, this is a different platform right now.
Yes.
It's no longer review. Okay, gentlemen, let's begin by looking into the content of the letters of the Freedom of Information Act as established, because many journalists do not have this information as to what is in the package. Let's begin with Bayo, because I know he has a good sense of it.
Well, it's a law that was eventually passed by the National Assembly on 27th of May 2011, and the next day, President Goodluck Jonathan assented to it. But before then, it had been in the works for about 10 years. It is a law that seeks to put in the public domain all public records, particularly any information of significance that is of public interest. And it affects all public institutions. And by public institutions, it's not just only government agencies. No, even private agencies that provide services for the public. If you are a bank, for instance, and you provide services to the public, you are also affected by the Freedom of Information Bill. And in the days when the struggle was on, journalists were among those who were at the forefront. And there was this erroneous belief that the freedom of information was for journalists. No, the freedom of information is for you and I, every member of the public. You have a right to demand for public information, provided it is in the area of public interest, so that you can contribute your quota, or government itself, or governance can be seen as open and transparent. In fact, another name for the Freedom of Information law is open governance and right to information. So that is the background for which the Freedom of Information. But how far it has gone in Nigeria? Well, a law, I would say, is a paper tiger. It is until when you test the veracity of the law, or when you use it as an instrument to obtain what it was established for, it will cease to become an effective law. So if we evaluate the Freedom of Information law, to what extent have citizens been emboldened to be able to use that law to access public information?
Now let's bring in someone who is in a constituency that uses this Freedom of Information Act primarily. She is a journalist. She was the former president of NAWAJ, as we call them. It's the Nigerian Association of Women Journalists. Evelyn Oyilo, welcome to Good Morning Nigeria.
Thank you very much.
Now, before I come to you, Evelyn, let me take Professor Umar. What are the responsibilities attached to it? Or let's first start by looking at the process of sourcing for the information. What does the law provide for in terms of the process? You need an information. What is the process you go through?
Well, let us look at the principal objective or the fundamental reason for the enactment of the law. A lot of effort, like Malam Bayo said, went into the promulgation of, well, promulgations, people say, during the military. Yes. Okay, the enactment of that particular law. The civil society organizations and all sorts of interests worked, literally fought for that law to be a reality in Nigeria. The objective is, one, to ensure that there's accountability in the public domain or public governance in this country. How do we ensure that those who are in the realm of power can account for their behavior and actions? Secondly, it is also aimed at instituting transparency in the process of governance, not just in government, but in all public sectors, like you said, in the private sector too, where you have a lot of money and a lot of things also happening. Then the third one is to ensure that there is the institution of the process of good governance in all that we do in this country. And you don't need to be convinced that you could see the effects of bad governance, of bad behavior in the public domain on what is happening in this country. It is because of bad governance that today people are talking about corruption. It is because of bad governance, conflict and insurgency almost overwhelmed us here, and a lot of these things. So the argument is, if you have an Information Freedom Act, it will enable citizens like you and me, not just journalists or the civil society groups, but every citizen, if you read the law, is entitled or has been given the power to demand for information on how things are happening in the process of governance in this country. As a citizen, based on what is prescribed in the law, I'm not a lawyer, I'm just giving you my own crude interpretation, you have the right to write and demand for information on certain things in governance. In a ministry, in an organization, you submit it. There is a way of doing it. If you meet a lawyer, he'll give you the information. You go there, submit the document, and within a period of 7 days, you are entitled to a response. And failure for that response will give you the opportunity to go to court, or you'll be given an explanation on why the organization feels you are not entitled to that information, and it has to be done in writing, and several other things.
Good. That's why we said we should look at the process, because organizations can latch on you not following process. That's what possibly why. So,
and that was why I said sometimes you can work with a lawyer.
That again could make it a little cumbersome. I thought Freedom of Information Act is for anyone. Can you walk into an organization and say, I want to know the number of staff?
The gates are not as open as you may be thinking. Okay. When I was coming into the NTR premises this morning, I met a gate man. Yeah. He asked me my name. Okay. And when I said my name, he looked at his register, then realized that, yes, you people have submitted my name. So organizations may not be that open. Okay. Because of that, you need to follow the process. And the law has clearly defined the steps that you need to follow. And that was why I said, if you have some legal advice, as an ordinary citizen, it may be a bit challenging. And don't forget, organizations are always defensive, particularly when it comes to the release of information. Information for us in communication means uncertainty reduction, and it is almost always powerful. And because of that, people guard whatever information they have so jealously. Now, if I ask you, can you, Femi, for example, give me your handset for me to access your WhatsApp messages? And you see, there you are. So the same thing with organizations.
All right, uncertainty reduction. Let's go to Sonny now, who is actively in practice, and whom I believe also requires information to be able to function effectively and efficiently as an editor. Let me ask you this. Are there encumbrances in the process of eliciting information from organizations?
Yeah, thank you very much for having me here. The Freedom of Information Act, to me, is just a formality. People are just, in Nigeria, the government reluctantly bowed to the pressure mounted on it by citizens, journalists, to pass the Freedom of Information Act in 2011. If you read closely, I think I would say that it's a mockery when you compare that act. You look at section 39. 38, 39 that should guarantee freedom of expression, freedom of the press, all of the freedoms. In fact, from section 33 to 43 or thereabout, all those sections talk about the different freedoms we should have. And then, since we say that we're a democratic country, you look at the First Amendment in the US, which states clearly that Congress shall not make any law that will breach the freedom of the press, freedom of all the freedoms. Now, in this act, you hear something like you will apply and you should be given the information within 7 days. And if you are not given, you should go to a court. All right? And when you go to a court, the penalty is that if the person in that act, read from beginning to the end, they did not say the chief executive officer of the organization should be the one to be penalized, or the head of public affairs who is supposed to relate with the information-seeking journalists. They did not specify who should be penalized. And the maximum penalty in terms of monetary terms is 500,000 for that establishment. And finally, if they don't collect the cash from you, you should go to jail for 1 year. But they did not say who. Go to jail. So there are so many loopholes that people have now exploited. And you even hear, when I read, I saw that the lists of people who should give information, it includes virtually everybody, every establishment in this country. But you see that states have not signed up to the act, except Lagos and Ekiti in the whole of this country. So they are making a mockery. Because you go to a place like NNPC to ask for information, they say they are not covered by the act. And they have already done that in writing. They replied that they are not covered. You go to certain places, they say they are not covered. So who is covered and who is not covered? The law should have explicitly stated this. Because right now, this Freedom of Information Act is a mockery.
Okay, sorry, I'm not cutting you short because I'm still with you. Right, from your experience and understanding of what freedom of that freedom should be,
yes,
what is obtainable in other climes?
Okay, let me say that on the African continent, recently, Ghana, for instance, passed a law abolishing libel. Ghana. Okay. But if I were a president, I wouldn't abolish libel. It should be there. It's very cumbersome for you to get to that level, to carry somebody and put in prison, except they are very, very reckless as a journalist. But you know, everywhere you have treason. Once they say you have said something against the government, you want to overthrow the government, you want to impugn, you want to bring down the sovereignty of a country by going into security areas, that one is very, very vague. They can hold you. But that is the situation across most countries, including Nigeria. So even in this Freedom of Information Act, you know that they have safely removed some key areas. Don't go into any place that will interfere with the national interest. And national interest is ambiguous. And who defines? There are certain people who define national interest.
In other climes where there is a practice of freedom of information, do they just divulge information without any procedure? That's what I wanted to speak to.
If you look at what, for instance, the First Amendment says, when you look at what the effect of First Amendment has done, you can see the way it has emboldened journalists in such climb to operate. There is no fear. Let me not go into country by country, but I want to say that because of the fact that the law is very clear, you cannot clip the wings of journalists. People in such climes operate with courage, with audacity to seek the truth. And because, what are we talking about? What is journalism for? Why are you seeking information? It is to make the society better.
Okay, the person we're going to ask the next question now is a journalist too, but I want her to look at it from the general use of information. Information can be used for research purposes. I'm talking to Evelyn now. Even though as journalists, you need this information, what's the scope of usage of information from your experience?
The scope of usage as
the information that people source for. What are the areas where it helps, it impacts on, other than journalism, other than using it to inform other people? You source for information from government agencies, you use it to inform people as journalists. But there are other people who also source for information. How does that impact on governance?
But you see, the fact that as journalists, we are the watchdog of society, people listen to us, we walk through various channels of communication, and it is our responsibility, first and foremost, to provide that kind of information that will promote good governance, that will promote freedom, that will promote and ensure that people's rights are not trampled upon. So the information we seek as journalists is very useful, is very important. The Act says anybody can go and seek information from records, but it's just so bogus because the woman in that village does not even know the process. The woman in the rural areas is not even aware of this act. The nature and the environment of government institutions are so intimidating that an ordinary Nigerian would even have the courage to approach. We know the way things are here. So by saying everybody has the right, everybody can access information, get records, get documents, I think we thank God for their generosity for putting it in that act, but it's far-fetched, it's not realistic, and a lot still needs to be done to review that act so that it will be in such a way that the real common people they are talking of will have access, to this information that they are seeking, and most especially journalists who have the courage and whose duty it is to access such information will also really have it the way we are. We are coming from a background of official secret acts for so many centuries, and suddenly there is this act that's giving us freedom. But this freedom is in quotes. We don't understand how this freedom is going to work because the reality on ground is that the instruments, the environment is not conducive for it. The government functionaries themselves, they still see the media or see any individual coming to ask questions with suspicion. There's this mutual suspicion between the journalist and the government functionary. So how do we break this wall? How do we ensure that this act is real and it will address the issues that it was created for in the first instance? So yes, we as journalists, it's our job to get this information to better our society because we are supposed to use this information for accountability, like Prof said, for good service, to our people, and also to ensure that there is really, really freedom in getting such information. So we still need to do that.
Okay, thank you. We'll still get back to you. But to Bayo now, hearing from Evelyn and Sonny speak to the issues they raised, the unpracticability of this act in terms of seeking information. And when you seek information, I'd say within 7 days you get the information. If it's a time-bound information, that one is over. So what are those encumbrances, and how can we get out of it?
Well, the two of them are my colleagues. They are journalists. On one hand, they have my sympathy in the sense that, yes, the journalist has his business is to seek information and publish it for the public good. However, if freedom of information is available, it ought to enhance the proficiency of his job. However, information like they know and I know, information is never given, it is taken. So a resourceful journalist should have the tenacity to take and seek the information. And in that process, the Freedom of Information Act becomes a tool. Don't forget, like what is provided for in the Constitution, there is no freedom of the press. There is freedom for every Nigerian. So there is no specific provision for the press, despite the fact that the press is challenged in Section 22 to hold those in governance accountable for the people. That is the irony of it all. You are given an assignment, but you are not given the wherewithal to do it. But be that as it may, journalism being what is it, with their tenacity, journalists can still operate within the ambit of the provisions of the law, within the ambit of the exceptions, the 8 exemptions, the no-go areas, and still use it as an effective tool to get results. For instance, Sept, a socio-economic rights agenda, used that information and went to court and challenged the Minister of Information to provide a list of those that he has been alleging in the public domain to be looters. And the minister had to comply by giving that. So that is the use of the Freedom of Information Act. There are several civil society organizations that are using it. But the sad thing for every journalist is to assume that it is our job and duty to hold those in government accountable. But here we are, we don't have any provision of press freedom. And that's why perhaps my brother Sonny is talking about First Amendment. He's talking about United States of America. You may not know that the first nation that had the Freedom of Information Act had it in the 18th century. It's Sweden. United States that everybody is talking about had it only in 1966.
1791.
Well, good. Nigeria was the 126th country to have it, and every country around the world was using the freedom of information as I have arrived as a nation that is democratic. So it is seen around the world that it is an instrument of open governance. And when you have it, and when you use it, then it makes governance to be transparent. The challenge now is we have it. Are we using it? If there are obstacles in using it, there's no law that is perfect. Through the processes of challenging and usage in the process, amendments can be occasioned by the lawmakers, and it is improved upon. But first, we have to use it.
Are you advising them to go undercover to get information?
No, I'm not saying so. You can't get information within the ambit of the law.
Then this freedom of information, if I take this last sentence he just gave, it's not worth it.
You need to understand that nobody gives you freedom on the platter of gold.
Yes.
Certainly not the Nigerian elite, not the Nigerian political elite, knowing the behavior and characteristics of the typical behavior, elite of Nigeria. Now, you have it on paper, correct? This is work in progress. And you need to understand that despite the provisions of the law, we have to make our own individual effort. If you remember what happened in the US during the Watergate scandal, it was not as if the government sat down, President Nixon sat down, folded his arms, and said, journalists, come and check. No. Nobody will commit some blunder in his organization and invite a journalist to come and check. No. Even the EFCC that has the police to cover it and all of that, they have to fight. In some cases, even invent for them to get information from individuals. So you have the paper, you have the law on paper, correct. Now, what effort are we making? One of the things which you are familiar with is that the process of investigative journalism is weak. You need to know that the law is not just for journalists, it's for every Nigerian citizen, but then journalists and the civil society class.
This area.
Yes.
But I think that this thinking,
yes,
that journalists want to expose a set of happenings somewhere, is one of the reasons why organizations don't want to give information. Bayo Achoyebi was my boss in Kaduna when in the newsroom, we will sit down, and you're from your constituency.
Yes.
Professors in ABU's area, professors in Bayero University will walk into the newsroom and seek information about other organizations from NTA.
Yes.
And knowing that we as journalists have this information. Now, and those were days when you couldn't Google. Those were days when you didn't have all those other information at your
when
something.
the floor was
But they couldn't walk to those organizations to source for those information. They will come to media houses. I'm sure media houses too experience
media houses
that.
then used to have good libraries.
Good. And some of them will delegate reporters to go and source for this information and give to these academics. Now, the thinking is that information is just for investigative journalism alone. It's also for research. Why why won't organizations want to divulge information that researchers will use to build Nigeria?
First of all, let me start at the level of the individual. As an individual, you need information for decision making and for opinion formation. Without access to information, it will be difficult for you to form an opinion on an issue. Now, the question is, what kind of information are you getting? Because the opinion you are going to form will be dependent on the quality of the information you have. If you have wrong information, your decision may likely be wrong, and that will also impact on your behavior and manifestation. Now, so at the level of organizations, for somebody like me in the university, I will always look for information outside, likewise my students, in the process of research. Now, some organizations are always friendly. You go to them, they give you the information. Some are forever protective. Now, take the police, for example. The normal, typical policeman is always suspicious of a journalist or a researcher because his belief is that you are going to misuse information which, for him, it is always in the process of being investigated. For you, the journalist, you are always searching for information for you to release it to the public as quickly as possible so that you beat any other person. So that conflict will always be there. And like I've said at the beginning, organizations are always protective of the kind of information they require. You may have what you may be described as safe information that they can release and the one that is unsafe. Take a typical ministry. If you go to the ministry these days, what you see is any file containing issues of finance is in the pocket of the permanent secretary and the director of finance, always. Nobody sees that file. But if it is the ordinary file, you can meet it, you can get the information in every other place. So people are protective of that. And this is why I said freedom is never given on a platter of gold. As a journalist, you have a first, maybe, demand for information than the other ordinary citizen. So what mechanisms are you also using? Don't forget, as a journalist, you have your own sources of power. Structural, psychological, constitutional, and systemic. All of these are available to you. To what extent have you been able to exploit this? And like I've said at the beginning, this is why we talk about investigative journalism, which enables us to set the agenda for the society. Now, if you look at the Nigerian journalism system, what kind of agenda are we setting? And you cannot set agenda except if you engage in investigative journalism, proper and effective investigative journalism, so that you can dig out the facts, write it, and present it to the public. As it is, we are weak in that respect. Mostly what you see as investigative journalism reports in our media organizations are either provided by the EFCC, ICPC, they do the investigations, and then they give us as journalists to just disseminate. Or if somebody has an interest, maybe in an organization there's a fight between the boss and some other people, they take the information, go and leak it. But this is not based on the initiative of the journalists. And this is why the politicians sometimes don't take us serious.
Yes, Prof, thank you indeed. Sonny, Prof has raised a very, very critical issues here. We talk about nobody will willingly give you information under normal circumstances. So you need to take it. Now, what are those strategies open to a journalist to get information when he needs it without necessarily going through protocols of writing and following? Because I recall this, that when we see documentaries packaged by foreign media on Nigeria, you discover that they go beyond just getting information. They have authentic and reliable information in the package. Now, one wonders, just as the Prof said, what is the duty of Nigerian journalists? Why are we not practicing beyond the normal seeking of information? How do we develop strategies to get information whenever we need and wherever it is?
Well, what Prof has said is very apt. Nick Going, a reporter with the BBC, wrote a book and said that what journalists really want to expose is the same thing that every government seeks to hide. That was Nick Going. Okay. And don't forget that when we say that journalists should develop strategists to get information through the watchdog role, who are the people who give this information? We always refer to Carl Benson and Bob Woodward, the two Washington Post journalists who exposed the Watergate. Right? They brought down Nixon.
How did they get the information?
I can tell you that it was trusted people within the system who gave the two journalists the information in confidence. In confidence. So journalists in Nigeria are not going to become superhuman to go and develop extraterrestrial skill. The problem we have in this country is that the level of suspicion is too high. People in government who are supposed to take journalists into confidence, and that's when you see that, oh, this person in CNN is a superstar, this person in BBC is a superstar. It is because the people in those countries take their journalists seriously. And because those journalists have proven themselves to be reliable, to be trusted. What do we have in Nigeria today? Who are the journalists? Where are they coming from? What is their background? How trusted are the journalists? Do they know when an information is given to you and that document is not yet declassified? You cannot print it. You cannot post it on WhatsApp. You cannot print it like that in your newspaper. You can't even use it as a bromide. So you can pick information and use and protect your source. Tomorrow, they will still give you. But here we have a situation where people who had failed in other professions and trades, they come into an ambiguous, a bogus organization called journalism to take refuge. And in coming to take refuge, they spoil the entire trade. For those who have gone to school to learn the trade, to know when you should not invade the privacy of a public officer. Because if you do, you have committed an offense. So the biggest problem that has afflicted the Nigerian journalism is that ignorance thrown up by the fact that the journalists are not trained and they don't know where their right starts and where it ends, limits seriously the capacity and the ability of the Nigerian journalist to seek what belongs to him and to get it. And having not known where the right begins and ends, and having not been able to position himself in such a way that he could be trusted, we have been boxed into a situation where we cannot play effectively the watchdog
Can we
role.
summarize the challenges?
Let me look at it this way.
Yes.
What I'm beginning to get from this discussion
Yes.
is that while a document exists called the Freedom of Information Act, which is supposed to enhance the dissemination and sourcing of information, both for the journalist and for the researcher and for governance, that information is not working. So people keep it aside and still go to source for information in their different ways, journalists inclusive. What tenacity does a researcher have, Bayo? If you use the word that the Freedom of Information Act is a paper tiger, what tenacity should a researcher have to, I can understand that of a journalist because that is his calling, that is his job. But an IT student, a student who is on IT, what tenacity should that student have to source somebody who is writing a project for his final project in university? How should that, shouldn't that document that act help such a person? Why should everybody be tenacious like a journalist to get information?
Well, that is the intentment of the law, to help you to get information. But what I mean by a paper tiger is that if a law is the tiger that you're supposed to use to get the information, if you don't use it, then the tiger remains on the paper.
Or if the paper itself does not help you to get what
the
you
paper
want.
does, because it spells out the procedure. And even then, the law itself challenged public institutions to put certain categories of information in public domain and update it periodically. And not only that, the Office of the Attorney General of the Federation is challenged to receive reports from public institutions by February of every year. And in that light, the Attorney General of the Federation is supposed to also report to the minority leader of the House of Reps and the Senate by April of every year about requests for freedom of information and compliance with it. So in the principle of the law has provided the avenue for seeking information, although it also provides exemptions area where you cannot go. It also provides individuals protection for their privacy. However, it challenges you to use the law, and where there are obstructions, it tells you the procedure to go and how to surmount those obstructions. And that is what I mean by saying.
In addition, sir,
yes,
there is an organization, I think the Media Rights Agenda.
Right.
They have what they call the information, the Freedom of Information Hall of Shame. And Hall of Shame is for organizations that misbehave by not providing information. They are listed.
And that organization created it by
yes,
itself.
okay. That's not even what I'm interested in talking about. I want to link up from where my colleague over there said. You see, if you look at the Nigerian media today, it is challenged by about 3 or 4 major challenges. One, the issue of trust, which he raised. How many of us today trust the Nigerian media as our major source of information? In the past, it used to be like this, but today it has become this way. Apart from the conventional media that we have, which used to be our major source of information, today the social media is part of it. And the social media facilitates discussion between billions of people, which means the Nigerian media has a serious challenge of being trusted because it is competing with the social media, which is global. This is one. Secondly, financial challenge. Take it seriously or not, the Nigerian media is financially weak. And you cannot engage in investigative journalism, in sourcing for information when you are financially weak. Investigative journalism demands money. You have to invest in that. Number 3, the issue of ethics. The Nigerian media is ethically challenged today in this country. There are so many ethical violations. There are so many unethical practices that we see glaringly, and they're associated with the Nigerian media system. And that undermines or subverts the issue of trust in the system. So when you look at this, you can now understand why it has been difficult for our journalists to be able to do this and to compound the issues, the issue of corruption. Corruption in Nigeria has passed the stage of being a disease, the stage of being an epidemic, the state of being a pandemic. Today it is systemic. It is in the blood. And if you want to remove corruption, you have to remove the blood of Nigeria and then bring in a new blood.
All right, sir. Let's pause you there for a while. Maybe we'll start looking for a new DNA. Okay. Now let me go to Evelyn. Right. Sonny and the Prof really pointed out one pertinent issue: disrespect for the professionals in this field. And again, we used to have this issue of brown envelope saga, and then there's also the issue of invasion of the trade by touts, which has actually compounded the entire issue. Nobody is sure who's a journalist. When it comes to a function, you see all manner of names, being thrown out as media houses. Now, Evelyn, how do we tackle this menace? From your experience, of course, I'm sure you've come in contact with many. So, how do we tackle that menace?
In fact, she is a good person to answer. Because president of Nawad. She would have seen all sorts of persons.
Yes.
Exactly.
So, physician, keep cure thyself.
Yeah, that problem should be left at the doorstep of the professional organizations, and I mean the Nigeria Union of Journalists, and of course all the Nigerian press organizations, and the Nigerian Press Council, because it's like it's an all-comers affair, and the system also, the way we operate, also makes it very loose, you know, to define who a journalist is. More especially now with the social media, it's a crazy, crazy world out there. And so, but the mainstream media, the conventional media that we know, the NUJ should take a lead. It should take a lead to, like, sieve and, you know, bring out, you know, the chaff from the grains.
Yeah.
The NUJ should do that. The NUJ should not be an organization that is just there for political reasons or for elections during triennial delegates conference. The NUJ should do more to ensure that professionalism, you know, is its watchword, and to make sure that these quacks are kicked out. It's not difficult to do. Already, we see all sorts of things. Rather than quarreling with beat associations, I think the NUJ should go out more to do something to ensure that it works closely with media houses, because the media houses cannot be doing their thing and the NUJ doing his thing, and there is no meeting point. So how do you know who are the real professionals? And so the NUJ, I understand they've started registration of journalists. They should do more about that. And also, the NUJ should be in the forefront of campaigning for the implementation of this Freedom of Information Act, because nobody is going to do it for us. The media rights agenda and the coalition that, you know, fought for the, you know, enactment of this act did their part. It's now left to us to make it work. If we don't, nobody's going to make it work for us. And in so doing, I believe the issue of professionals and quacks and all these things will be addressed. So the NUJ has a great role to play in all of this, and also members of the Nigeria Press Organization.
During the 10 years of advocacy and campaign for the enactment of the Freedom of Information Act, journalists and the social organizations were neck deep in it. So it is understandable when any discussion on the Freedom of Information Act comes up and it tends towards journalism. The main reason is that these are a group of professionals that are constitutionally saddled with the responsibility of living by information. But the Freedom of Information Act is for you. Yes, you, anyone who wants to source for information. And that the monitoring of the Freedom of Information Act is domiciled in the Federal Ministry of Justice. Sonny, you are active and you source for information.
Yes.
In the streamlining of the process and of getting the information,
yes,
you must have gone through all the processes and have seen that you have to relate with the Ministry of Justice.
Yes.
How helpful have those processes been in getting information?
Believe me, the processes are not cumbersome. If you even read it from the surface, it's as simple as one would see. You request and wait for 7 days. If you are not given, you go to court. But let's reduce it to reality. From the time of writing, they did not say, again, I go back to the Act. When you write, the Act has not specified who you should address your letter to. Because you can send it to the PRO. You can send it to the DG. You can go and drop it with the secretary to the minister or whoever. And they said they have not seen it. Or we saw it, you submitted 1st January. They said they saw it on the 5th of March. Maybe they will stamp it to show when they received. So there are encumbrances along the way. That's one.
These are Nigerian-created encumbrances,
yes,
not the law itself.
Yes, not the law itself. Okay. And for the fact that the Act itself did not say specifically the person who is seeking information should write to the general manager of NTA or should write to the MD
Can the law do that?
No,
Because
I'm
the law
just...
would not know the designation of every organization.
But who are the people who made the law? Are they not Nigerians?
So
they are from here. They know the configuration. They know the titles of the people, organogram of all the establishments in Nigeria. They know. I'm sure because of the level of pressure mounted, they just wanted a wishy-washy thing to put in place so that people will not say, oh, Nigeria is lagging behind. We are lagging behind.
You were at the National Assembly. People were at the National Assembly to monitor.
I'm not so comfortable with this line of argument for the simple fact that let us not sit down and assume that the law can do the practical aspects for us. To what extent are we, either as individuals or as journalists or as civil society organizations, being able to test the veracity and the applicability of this law?
That is why I asked Sonny.
I'll come back to. This has been done many times. And I quoted an example of people who wrote. They went to get information. And they told the journalists clearly in writing. They are written. And they've even written to court.
And now
that they are not covered.
What did we do
So
as
what
journalists?
did the court do?
What collective action did we take to challenge that effort?
Prof, so when Evelyn was saying that the NUJ is supposed to play a key role in all of this, I think that's what she meant. That there should be a collective
Don't forget,
responsibility
NUJ is
of
more
seeking.
of a welfare organization than a professional organization.
But this is the body, this is the umbrella body.
Exactly.
This is the umbrella body.
trade union.
It's the umbrella body of the practitioners.
And if you look at the nature of NUJ, it may not perhaps be equipped to be able to do that particular responsibility. Yes.
There's
something.
something.
No.
Yes,
Who will do it?
Wait.
Who will do it?
I think, sorry.
Wait.
There's something we call public interest litigation.
Correct.
It doesn't have to be NUJ.
Exactly.
It could be three people who have interest, minds in the matter. So this can
now,
be challenged.
let me give you an example. Right now, there are some organizations being supported by the MacArthur Foundation, some of the newspapers and some organizations. And they have been engaged in investigating corruption and corrupt activities in this country, and the stories are appearing in newspapers. One of the reasons that I may ascribe to the reason of maybe the journalists not being so active is this issue of weak funding. Let me take this NTA as an example. Now, if NTA wants to investigate a story relating to any government organization here, the issue of funding will come up. Like I've said, investigative journalism is never cheap. You have to invest in it. But is NTA equipped with the right resources to produce first-class documentaries that could expose certain things like we see on CNN or Al Jazeera? Not that NTA doesn't have the staff. They have the capacity, but the funding is weak. When they are now put in TSA, for example, if they want to access money, they have to write all sorts of papers before they could access money, give you, as a producer, go and spend millions, go into the bushes of Nigeria, investigate certain things.
And that's what this discussion is about.
Supposed to, and we are going to address it.
Sorry. How does, in this investigation you are talking about, how does the Freedom of Information Act help?
Good. No matter what it is, you have a starting point, and you have a legal justification supporting your behavior. Yes. This is all that you require. You are not operating illegally. You are not operating out of the law. There is a law supporting what you are doing. Now, certainly people will oppose you, no doubt about it. You are going to have that opposition. But you have the law behind you. So do you have the resources? Do you have the capacity? Do you have the tenacity? And then do you also have the support of your organization to be able to push forward?
Honestly speaking, Prof, we have raised critical points this morning in this conversation. But one issue remains critical. When you say funding, because information is not cheap to get.
It's never.
One, does it mean that you pay to get information? Because
now,
why I make reference to foreign media is the fact that when they want to get information, I can assure you they will get it.
Exactly.
Now, the law is with us. We have the act.
Yes.
Right. It's operational.
Yes.
It's left for the practitioners to now put that law into use by sourcing information from any organization.
Yes.
Right. And as Sonny said, no organization is prepared to give it to you willingly because there's always something to hide.
Yes.
Now, Bayo, should a journalist go beyond the normal practice, like an undercover, to get information? Because invariably across the globe, no journalist can tell you sort of the opposite information. Right? Is it possible for us to begin to apply that techniques of go as undercover to get information?
Even that phrase you just mentioned, that journalist is not supposed to disclose the source of information. Do you know it is provided for in that law? It is provided for in that law. though the law is not just for journalists, for every members of the public, it spells out the procedure for getting the law. He cited the example of a public institution that was approached for information, and he wrote back to say, no, it is not covered by that law. Then you don't stop from there. You follow that up. If you say it's not covered by that law, there's a level at which you can take it to. Because after the number 7 days, and if there's a refusal, the law allows you to take that same issue even to a court of law to say that I have sought information from this agency. This agency has denied me on the ground that it is not covered by the law. The court will determine whether it is covered by law and order that organization to provide that information within the time required by law. But what happens is...
You can put some of these organizations on the defensive. Now, you are talking about funding. Now, if Sony wants to do an investigation that may take him to Mambila Plateau, Obudu, Lagos, Sokoto, following, let's say, the activity of a particular ministry regarding to a particular line of budgeting, will he not require money to travel? Will he not? So, okay, who will give the money? That's why I'm talking about funding.
It's and not who will also give him information when he gets there? Who will give him information when he gets there?
It depends on how he plans what he's going to do. And he has a law. As a journalist, you have a law. I mean, you have this law backing you to go to places and look for information. And no matter what, you just can't start an investigative process without having an issue and then doing your own desk review and all other ways of getting information. So this is why you are there.
Okay, we'll take a breather and return to this very lively discussion, which should help transparency in governments. And indeed, that should be our next line of discussion. How this law helps transparency, it helps an open government. We'll take a break for now.
Nigerians. Suicide bombers are not spirits. They are not ghosts. They are human beings like you and me. They live amongst us. They are your neighbors. They are your friends today, but terrorists tomorrow. So you must know your neighbor now. Security begins with you and me. Know your neighbor. Be vigilant. Be security conscious. Report suspicious persons, objects, and movements to the police and other security agencies. The security of our nation is a duty for you and me.
If you see something, say something. Nigeria, unite against terrorism.
This message is brought to you by the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
Hold it! Me, I don't cover my hand from oil bunkering.
General, what you going to yarn? What did the yarn say? I don't understand though.
Because they spoil our water and our environment. And they cause our people serious harm. Military said, no good. Me, I not do again sound. Because why? Change begins with me.
This message is brought to you by the National Orientation Agency in conjunction with the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
All right, you're still watching Good Morning Nigeria on the network service of the NTA, and our topic for today is a Freedom of Information Act, which was enacted in 2011. But of course, what is in the front burner at this moment is the fact that it's not been properly practiced. Journalists are saying that it did not provide for a very smooth operation of that profession. All of us today are journalists, including our guests, and it's becoming more interesting than ever because it concerns us. It also concerns the nation because, of course, we're talking about transparency that it will bring in governance, generally speaking. Because those who hold the information or who hide the information are not doing justice to this nation because we need such information to determine the way we are being governed. And right now, let's go to the issue of transparency being one of the key reasons for enacting this law. Bayo, what should this true practice of Freedom of Information Act do for a government?
The essence and the rationale behind the law is to make sure that government transaction is put to the public domain. And that is to say that every action of government should be determined by public interest and should not be obscure for members of the public for which the government is serving. our discussion so far seems to center strongly about the obstacles that the journalists will have to surmount. Let's still emphasize that the law is for every Nigeria, not just the journalists. However, the law is also not against the journalists. The journalists can also use the law, but it's not specifically meant for only him alone. But the essence of the law is to make sure that there is open governance. There is right to information, and the information is power. And by so doing, if you empower every member of the society to have the rightful access to governmental and public information, then information is power, then you are empowering the people. So the essence is to empower the people to ensure that they can have information. Once you have information, you can challenge your representative from whatever constituency and see that, look, every year a sum of 200 billion is allocated as constituency allowance. This is how it's distributed. The principal officers get a certain percentage. The other members of the National Assembly get a certain percentage. What are you using this constituency project allocation every year? What are you using it for? You have a right as a member of society to demand that information from your representative. If he doesn't provide it, you have a right to follow it up. So it is not just exclusively for journalists. Sadly, though, journalists are supposed to hold government accountable to the people, and therefore they can piggyback on that law to have it effectively used for their work. But what it needs specifically is for people to test the law by effectively wielding and citing the law, and also being determined to follow it up where you are denied, to go to court to ensure that your access to information is not denied.
Now, by coincidence, this present government, although the law was passed before this present government came on board, but by coincidence, this government, the present government, really prides itself in its transparency. Indeed, at the international level, it has gone to sign the Open Government project, yes. Open Government Initiative. And so one of the cardinal programs of this government is to throw governance open. So that makes two things people can use to pressurize organizations and other. How far have these the intent of government itself, how far has it helped the utilization of the Freedom of Information Act?
And thank you very much. Well, people say that the government is transparent, but there are also arguments that the transparency is at the level of the president alone. Remove the president, you can't be sure and voteful for any other person.
That
if
is
you remove
why
the presidency,
just programs of government can be used.
Exactly. Now, number one, you know that up to now, many of the states have refused to domesticate the FOI Act, which means at the state level, and you see how they are been taking away local government's resources, despite all the efforts and the noises Nigerians are making, and everybody has seen how the local government system has been completely killed in this country by the governors at the level of the states. It's issue of transparency. Now, at the level of the federal government also, there are questions. Of course, we all trust that the president is doing perfectly well in terms of fighting corruption. But whether his subordinates are also perfectly doing that is a big question mark that Nigerians are asking. And many of our journalists need to do more. And not just journalists, but civil society organizations and individuals. And when we talk of using the act, it's not just for corruption. We have issues of environment. We are destroying our environment unnecessarily. We have issue of population growth. To what extent are we able to also investigate the impact of uncontrolled population growth in Nigeria and enlighten Nigerians? Issue of diaspora, how our young people are, and there are several other things.
Intellectual
that people can also.
You want to write a book, you need information.
You need information. Yes. And a lot of any other things. But the major issue is Nigerians are not even fully conversant about the contents of the law itself. Yes. Level of awareness is low. And then there are also, like I've said, the resistance of the states. Then there's also the resistance of the states. And then there are also no legal precedents, for example, Sept, to test the level to which the law can be applied or not, and several other issues. Now, we need transparency in a democratic system. You cannot talk of democracy without talking about information. Without information, the whole system will be delegitimized. And that becomes also subversive to the opinion and attitude and interest and behavior of the people in the democratic system. And once people lose interest in that, it becomes problematic. And our politicians also need to be checked. There are a lot of things that are happening which are unwholesome. Now, there are so many people looking for offices, and our journalists and our people are not asking questions about the behavior and antecedent of some of these characters who are promoting themselves to become either president, governors, or whatever the office. It is the duty of the Nigerian journalists and civil society organizations to investigate and tell us about the past of some of these people so that you do not put wrong people into offices, and at the end of the day, the whole country crashes. Crashes.
Prof, thank you. I think we are beginning to also have a feel of getting background information on people. We hear about the NYSC certificate issues. We've heard about the
These are just some minor.
Well,
and I can tell you who are doing this. Premium Times are the people in the forefront. And why is Premium Times doing that? They are also supported. They are also supported.
But the investigator and the journalist, that is a good thing. But for you to come to the conventional setting is what Evelyn was also raising when she was making comments. But let me return to Sonny now. And the domestication of this act is found not really effective. Just 2 states that have been able to domesticate that. What does that tell you? And I want you to also let us know how your men, your journalists, information you are getting from different parts of the state with respect to how they source information from state government who have refused to domesticate the act. Another thing is the lack of awareness in this country, and you can also speak to that.
Okay, the point is that you see, there is a long-drawn argument by states that, this is a federation. They cannot latch onto whatever the federal government is doing. And in the wisdom of those who passed the law, they recognized the fact that, yes, this is a federation. Any state that wants to key into the law should domesticate it. And unfortunately, so far, only Lagos and Ekiti have signed on. And let me say that as a journalist, I would have loved to play the role of a watchdog journalist. I would have loved. It is Professor Thomas of Harvard, who gave 4 roles that the journalists play. Of these 4, I would have wanted to play the 3rd, which is watchdog. He said that journalists play the role of a signaler. They play the role of a common carrier, and they play the role of a watchdog, and finally, political representation, which they cannot effectively do and should not try to do political representation. That's Thomas Patterson, a professor of communication and politics at Harvard. Having seen the roles which I should play, and the role I have been playing since I became a journalist, I would have wanted to be putting government people to check, exposing issues they are doing that are neither necessary nor permanent in society. But like Prof has said, the major problems I've seen in the course of this work is that, first, nobody in government, not one, is willing to bring out one information that is not of interest to them, their own selfish, enlightened self-interest. They won't tell you. Why did the government, if you, for instance, you ask them, can we see the list of contractors that have been given contract by the government and how they arrived at the contract sum? You won't get it. It is only when such a high-ranking official might have lost out in government that he will now feel aggrieved. So if he trusts you, that's when the issue of trust comes in. If he trusts you, he says he has a big information to give you, that you must use it and blow his opponent, that this contract was rigged in favor of this person. So it is not that journalists in Nigeria are not willing, ready, or able. They are very good, daring resourceful journalists in this country, as there are fake ones, those who want to reap from where they did not sow. But the point is that certain impediments have been placed on their way. I would have been...
these impediments statutory impediments? That's because
Political,
the topic is the Freedom of Information Act. Is it statutory?
Systemic. Yeah. Well, now that we have the Freedom Act, one would say, okay, statutorily, we have a potent instrument, right? But you can see the lacunas embedded in this act. So they must clear them. They have taken a right step.
And the dog is also sick.
So again,
the watchdog is
the watchdog is sick.
The dog is sick somehow, if you look at what I have enumerated. Because one of the biggest things we should do when they ask the British education reformist, his name in 1794, when they asked him, Thomas Macaulay, they asked him, what should we do to help society to grow? He said in three words, educate the people. Once you educate the people, you remove fear, you remove hopelessness, and you strengthen the hands of the people to move forward.
That brings us to the awareness level of the information Freedom of Information Act. Evelyn, the people, how much do you think people know of the even much as I don't want to take the discussion away from journalism, even journalists, how much do they know of the Freedom of Information Act?
You just spoke about an open government initiative.
Yes.
How many people know about that? That we have signed on to be an open government. How many? And then I just saw a jingle of the NOA, National Orientation Agency. What are they doing? They should also set agenda. Government must also show its willingness, political willingness. There must be political will by the government itself to put in motion strategies that will make people more aware of this Freedom of Information Act. Leaving it at the doorstep of the journalist alone will not work. When you go for an assignment, even at the villa level, at a point they say, oh yeah, move out with your cameras. What are we saying? That it's a secretive system we are operating. What is wrong with the journalists being there? What are you going to discuss that is not of national interest? Is it every discussion that is of a security threat? Recently, I was privy to view, to do a preview of a documentary done by the Voice of America on Boko Haram, the dreaded Boko Haram. And you won't believe that pictures that were shown, I've never seen anywhere before in Nigeria. And the Voice of America did that documentary, went to the trenches, to the war theater zone in Borno. What is wrong with NTA having that opportunity to be taken into trust, into confidence by the government, by the military guys, So we must have an enabling environment created by government itself, not just giving us a law that they are not backing. For now, I do not see any backing. I do not see the institutional backing. I do not see any government backing. And so the journalists are left, the law is there, take it, and you can do nothing with it. Implementation is key. So the NOA, you can come into this. Let's form some strategic alliance between the NOA, the NTA, the major media organizations, the NUJ, the press organizations, the National Press Council, to make sure that we keep this thing on the front burner. Because if we don't do, nobody does. An agenda has to be set.
All right, closing thoughts now, Bayo.
Well, we've heard about domesticating of the law. You domesticate international treaties and laws, but federal laws are applicable across the nation. The EFCC law is a federal law. It is applicable in the states.
But
so,
except River State, and now Benue wants to.
Well, if they test it in the law court, you see, if you fail to test a law, the law will not grow. So if there's a federal law and somebody is offending that law in a state and you take it upon yourself to challenge it, then you are testing the efficacy of that law in court. And that is the only way you have precedent and that law will grow. And unless and until we begin to use the Freedom of Information law as citizens to seek public information, the law will not grow. That's why the law...
Yes. Government itself needs to know that this law is in own interest. Because if you don't give out information proactively, the social media is there to provide what you could call fake news. That's why you see government people bothering about fake news, because they are not providing the right information at the right time. So they need to do that. Secondly, in the universities, we are also changing our curriculum to ensure that we now teach our students to become very strong in investigative journalism. This is one dimension we cannot afford. And the media itself needs to collaborate with civil society organizations so that they could help them in sourcing for information. And then above all, we also need to check our behavior and our ethical conduct in the media system so that people could have that trust in us. Otherwise, the social media is there to continuously challenge the behavior of the conventional media, which appears to be weak in setting the agenda for the rest of the society.
Thank you very much, Prof. Very, very good area to land. Professor Umar Pate, former Dean, Faculty of Communications, Bayero University. Thank you for coming on Good Morning Nigeria. I also want to thank Sonny Daniel, Northern Regional Editor of Vanguard Newspapers. You're welcome. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
And Evelyn Oyinlo, former President, Nigerian Association of Women Journalists. We want to appreciate you for finding time for us. And Bayo Atoebe, you've stayed extra time. We'll pay you overtime.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Former Executive Secretary, Nigerian Press Council. Thank you very much. And that is our discussion on Good Morning Nigeria, the Freedom of Information Act. How far has it impacted on open governance in Nigeria?
All right, and thank you indeed for being part of our show this morning. We will return again on air, God willing, that's on Monday, 7 a.m. for another edition of A Good Morning Nigeria, where national burning issues are properly dissected. My name is Kirian Umayo. Have a great weekend.
And I'm Femi Okewo, thanking you and enjoy your weekend too.